Alright guys, Bitcoin just got rejected at a key level to the exact dollar. And there are some bearish signs flashing right now that you need to see. Let me show you. So Bitcoin saw a huge pump from the lows after those bullish divergences formed on multiple time frames that we were tracking. But what you are going to see right here is that Bitcoin got rejected exactly at the liquidity level at 76,000 to the dollar. And as I told you in yesterday's video, I was entering a brand new short position on Bitcoin right at this area with a clear invalidation above this high. And that short is now playing out. As I said, Bitcoin now has some bearish signs flashing. If we open up the MACD on the 4-hour time frame, what you're going to see is a bearish divergence right here. Bitcoin is making higher highs, but the MACD is making lower highs. And if we zoom out to the 12-hour time frame, same thing. Higher highs on Bitcoin, lower high on MACD right here. So we've got bearish divergences on two higher time frames forming right at this rejection. And that is of course a bearish indication. Now a few videos ago we talked about this liquidity level at 70.4 thousand US dollars. And we said ideally Bitcoin would sweep that level before moving higher. But that level remains unswept. And as you know, unswept liquidity attracts price. And if you open up the liquidation heat map on the 1-week chart, what you'll see is very telling. Not much liquidity is building above the recent high, but there is a large liquidation cluster sitting right under the recent low. Right at that liquidity level at 70.4 thousand US dollars, where nearly 200 million in longs would get tracked and liquidated. So the market has a big reason to push price down there. And if we zoom out a little more to the 2-week chart, it gets even clearer. The biggest liquidation cluster is again exactly below this recent low, and we are talking over 280 million in potential long liquidations sitting right there. So on both the 1-week and the 2-week chart, the biggest magnet for price is to the downside. And there's one more thing. There is this daily level that aligns very nicely with our liquidity level and the liquidation cluster at this low. And let's zoom out a little and take the fib retracement and drag it all the way from the bottom to the top of this entire move. What you're going to see is that the 0.5 fib level falls perfectly at our liquidity level and the daily level right here. So we've got the daily level, the liquidity, the liquidation cluster, and the 0.5 fib retracement all pointing to the same area around 70.4 to 70.7 thousand US dollars. That's a lot of confluence at one level, and that makes it a key area to watch if we do get a retrace back down. It could definitely act as a strong support for the price and a potential area where I would be looking to take some profit on my short. And Bitcoin also still has the CME gap at 69.5 thousand US dollars that remains unfilled. And as you know, more than 90% of all CME gaps do get filled. So it would really make sense for Bitcoin to visit that level sooner or later. And that level sits right below our liquidity and the daily level, so if Bitcoin does retrace, it could very well sweep everything on the way down. And yes, if that happens, Bitcoin would also break back under this major trend line from the all-time high, which would of course be another bearish Bitcoin indication. And here's another thing. If you've been watching the recent videos, you know I've been showing you this chart. In 2026, Thursday is by far the worst day for Bitcoin with an average return of nearly minus 2%. Today is Wednesday and tomorrow is Thursday. And if you remember, I showed you this chart on Sunday telling you that Mondays have been extremely bullish for Bitcoin. And if we look at the chart, you'll see that this massive pump to 76,000 US dollars began on Monday. So the bullish part of the week is behind and the worst day is coming up tomorrow. That combined with the bearish divergences, the unswept liquidity below and the liquidation cluster, there's a lot pointing to a move lower from here. Now I have something very interesting to show you, but before that, if you guys are finding this helpful, I would really appreciate if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Alright, let's get back to the video. Bitcoin broke above this trend line from the all-time high on the normal chart, but if we turn on the log scale and move the trend line back up to the highs, what you're going to see is that Bitcoin actually hasn't hit the trend line yet on the log scale. And even the golden pocket is sitting slightly higher on the log scale and remains untouched. So even though it looks like Bitcoin broke the trendline on the normal chart, on the log scale there is still room to go. And I do think that's an important area if Bitcoin goes any higher from here. And if we turn off the log scale and pull up the fib extension to measure this move, what you're going to see is that the 1-to-1 target of the C wave is coming in at approximately 79.3 thousand US dollars. And it aligns perfectly with this liquidity level right here. So if Bitcoin does push higher rather than lower, that's a major level to watch in my opinion. So that's where we are. Short term, I'm leaning bearish with the bearish divergences, the unswept liquidity at 70.4 thousand, the CME gap at 69.5 thousand, and the worst day of the week coming up tomorrow. But if Bitcoin does push higher from here, the C wave target at 79.3 thousand US dollars and the log scale trendline are still in play. As always, this is not financial advice and manage your risk. Let me know in the comments what you guys think and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.